Hey, what's going on, everyone? And a big welcome to another video. And in this video, I will be analyzing all four of the tie breaks that took place today to determine who would be the world champion in Astana in Kazakhstan between Ding Liren and Jan Nepomniachtchi. It was decided in the first four games, so in the rapid time control, where the players had 25 minutes plus 10 seconds for every move. So, yeah, I will not give away the results so that someone who doesn't know who is the winner can find out through watching this video till the end. Now, in game one, Ding Liren was white and he opened up with one d4, his favorite move throughout this match, one of his main weapons, along with one c4, but mainly one d4, and also the move that has been his main move throughout his career. Knight f6, so Nepomniachtchi sticks to his main weapon, which is the Nimzo-Indian, and knight f3 by Ding Liren, and after d5, we do not see c4, or any other move. I mean, c4 is the main line. It's possible. g3 is also possible. Bishop f4 is something we've seen before. The London system. e3 is something we've seen before. Yeah, but the choice here was the move c3. Quiet move, but a very dangerous one if black doesn't know what they're doing. So after c5, d takes c5 followed. And this can become really dangerous if black doesn't manage to win the pawn back or show enough compensation for it, then they will be in trouble. So yeah, after d takes c5, e6 followed, which aims to regain the pawn on c5, and black would want to have the strategic advantage of having two central pawns against one for white. So bishop e3 followed, white develops a piece and protects their extra pawn. However, we need to note that the development is not harmonious, so black does have some degree of compensation because the bishop on e3 blocks the pawn on e2, which blocks the bishop on f1. So bishop e7, Nepomniachtchi stays calm and they want to first finish their development and castle their king, and then think about how they will regain that extra pawn. And here g3 by Ding, a move that makes a lot of sense. Why? Because white wants to put their bishop on g2 and then castle. And yeah, since the bishop is on e3 defending the extra pawn, e3 is not possible, so the bishop needs to somehow get developed. So g3 makes a lot of sense. And now knight c6 by Nepomniachtchi. Here, yeah, the point of this move controls important central squares, and black may want to go e5 later on. Bishop g2, and now black castled. Now b4, which is a typical idea in this type of structures, because white wants to hang on to their extra pawn on c5 and bolster it and support it even more. This is a typical move in other openings too, like the London system or like the Caro-Kann, the advanced variation, for example, where white takes a pawn on c5 and tries to hang on to it. Anyway, knight g4 followed by black, because black is going to now try to regain the pawn. And after bishop d4, you might be wondering, does e5 not trap the bishop and force it to retreat to e3, where it can be captured, and then white will be left with a horrible pawn structure? Well, the answer is there is the intermediate move as well. So h3 could have happened here, and after taking on d4, taking on g4, the h file has opened, and this is going to be eventually quite risky for the black king. However, also we need to note that if the knight moves back to f6 or even worse h6, then the e5 pawn will be lost, and it will be two extra pawns for white and a winning position. So he avoids all this. He goes queen c7, so extra control to the e5 square, and he waits for him to castle. And now after he castles, now he goes e5. Of course, h3 is the typical reaction, the intermediate move, so the bishop is attacked, but white attacks the knight. And now after taking on d4 the bishop, taking on g4 the knight, taking on c3 the pawn, and now knight takes c3, white is threatening the pawn on d5, and black needs to avoid that, so they go knight takes b4. Now, after a3, black needs to be careful because if they move their knight, then white will take on d5 with a double attack, and they will be up a pawn. So black avoids it, and they go bishop f6, again the intermediate move, so important in chess. And rook c1, a very sensible move. Why? Because the rook protects the knight, first of all, on c3, and also the knight now is no longer pinned to the rook. It was also possible to take on b4, rook takes b4, and now the rook is under attack. Let's say something like rook b1, and yeah, we would get this position still roughly equal, with chances for both sides. Rook c1 was played, and now bishop takes c3, rook takes c3, and the knight drops back to c6, queen takes d5, bishop takes g4, with a very slight advantage for white, and that's because of their superior development. Knight g5 followed, h6 hitting the knight, and now knight e4, rook to e8, okay, and now e3, and rook e5 hitting the queen. The queen drops back to d2, rook d8, gaining another tempo on the queen, and now knight d6, a nice move. The knight comes to a great square, an outpost on d6. Now, if it can survive there, I don't know, because there are moves for later on like b6 that could undermine the pawn on c5 that defends the knight. So what followed was rook to h5, and now rook to b1, which hits the pawn on b7, and knight e5, e4, and now b6, c takes b6, and a takes b6 from Nepomniachtchi. Has he lost his mind? Has he blundered his queen? Well, it seems like he has, and white can certainly grab the queen. However, this would be a terrible move in account of knight f3, and after bishop takes f3, bishop takes f3, there is an unavoidable checkmate on h1, even though white is up so much material. That's completely irrelevant. King safety is more important sometimes, like here. And of course, if the king goes to f1, then black would take on d2 and then take the rook on b1, and black would be completely winning with their extra rook. So what followed here after rook takes, after a takes b6 was not rook takes c7, but knight b5. And after knight b5, rook takes d2, knight takes c5. A massive difference than before is that now the f3 square is under control by the rook on c3. So none of all this works. Bishop h3, and now bishop takes, rook takes, king g2 hitting the rook, rook h5, and now rook b5. There are some threats from both sides here. For example, rook d1 followed, knight d5, and rook to h1. In this position, what's going on? Well, black wants to give a checkmate in one move by going rook 5 to h2. Very important to specify which of the two pieces goes to a square when two same pieces can go to the same square. Anyway, here something needs to be done for the checkmate. Knight e7 was played, and after king h7, rook takes e5. And a possible continuation could have been this one, and after here, then here, and get into this position, which is also completely equal. White will now either attack b6 or defend e4. This is an equal position, equal material as well. But what he preferred to do after rook takes e5 was just to repeat, because check, and now the king needs to come to a g1. Why? To stay in contact with the rook on h2, because if he goes there, then this is clear advantage, clear exchange up for black. White should avoid this, and they should go king g1, and after they go king g1, rook h1, because if he takes the rook, then we will have the same scenario, not the end of the world or anything, but yeah, he preferred to make a draw in this way. And after king g2, white offered a draw, which was accepted. A very interesting first game. Now, the second game, Nepomniachtchi had white. I'm waiting for it just to load here on my computer, if you can bear with me. Yeah, it was a very interesting round one game, and now we're going to have a look at round two. So here, again, a draw. as you can see. And yeah, Nepomniachtchi opened up with e4, a move that he's played in every single game in this match except one. In the rapid time control, this did not change. And this is the right strategy if you want my opinion. For me, I mean, I would try and play the same openings in rapid, blitz, and standard. Why? Because why change openings and why not stick to what you know, regardless of the time control? So e4, e5 by Ding, his favorite move as well. He played it in every single game where he faced one e4, apart from the game where he played the French defense. And knight f3, knight c6. He hasn't played a single game with the Petrov, even though the Petrov is known for being a weapon that Chinese players often use when they want to draw with the black pieces. Bishop b5, the Spanish. He hasn't played anything else in this match. He did play the Italian against Magnus Carlsen in their match in Dubai in 2021. However, in this match, he goes bishop b5 and now a6. We did see one game with the Berlin with knight f6 from Ding Liren, but a6 is his main move. He's a warrior of the marshal. And bishop a4. Nepomniachtchi does not believe in getting an advantage through the Ruy Lopez exchange by taking on c6. So bishop a4, knight f6, castles, bishop e7, and he sticks to his strategy, which is to avoid the marshal. So he goes after bishop b7, d3. Another game, he did go for bishop takes c6, but not in a single game did he go for 6 rook e1, which is the main move in this position. And then after 6 rook e1, b5, bishop b3. I'll just put the moves on the screen. So rook e1, bishop b5, bishop b3, the only move. And now castles. c3 allows the marshal. And the sidelines available are h3, d3, a4, and h3, d3, a4, and is there one more? d4 as well. And also there is the sideline c3, d5, d4. Anyway, let's stick to what happened in the game. d3 was played, b5, the typical move, bishop b3, and now d6. Now, in previous games, we saw Nepomniachtchi go for a3 in this match, which is the move that Peter Zvidler recommends in his chess 24 course. We've seen c3, which is the move where he also won a very nice game, which is the move that Niels Grandelius recommends in his chessable course. However, in this game, he did go for a4, and after a4, bishop d7 was the choice by Ding, a flexible move. Keeps the bishop on that diagonal, the c8, h3 diagonal. And here h3 was played by white, castles, and now bishop e3. And yeah, h3 is a very important move in the structures. Not only stops the bishop from coming to g4, which is very important because it would pin the knight and to reduce white's control of the d4 square. And the center is very, very important in every opening. Also, h3 stops knight g4, which is something that you should always look out for in other openings too, like in the Najdorf, in the Dragon, etc. When you go bishop e3, you should always ask yourself about the knight g4 possibility in the Pirc defense as well. Knight a5 was played, hitting the bishop on b3, and of course bishop a2. I cannot stress enough how important the light square bishop is for white in the Ruy Lopez and in the Italian game as well. B takes a4 was played by black, and now bishop d2, knight c6, so the knight comes back, and knight c3. Rook b8, it hits the pawn on b2, and rooks belong to open and semi-open files like this one here. Knight takes a4, not only it regains the pawn, but it also protects the pawn on b2. Knight d4, bishop c4, c6, knight takes d4, e takes d4, bishop f4. So development by both sides. And now bishop e6, rook e1, and now a5. After a5, queen f3 was played, rook to b7, e5, and knight d5. After knight d5, the moves followed were e d6, bishop d6, bishop takes d6, queen takes d6, and now queen e4. After queen e4, knight f4 followed, which opens up the two bishops to allow their exchange. Queen e5 was played, queen takes e5, rook takes e5, first an exchange of queens, then an exchange of bishops. Rook comes up to b4, hitting the pawn. Rook to c5, d3 from white, a very important move. Taking on d3, c takes d3, knight takes d3, rook takes c6, knight d5, rook c7, knight takes c4, knight c5, knight takes b2, just to show everyone. Rook takes b2 would be a massive error because of knight d7 with a double attack against the rook on f8 and also the knight on c4. So that's why it was not preferred. So knight takes b2 was played instead. Knight d7 hitting the rook, rook e8, rook takes a4, and now rook takes a5. Now material might be equal. However, black needs to be a bit careful because they have a weak back rank. White has played the move h3, so they have a, let's say, loft for their king. However, black has not done so. Knight d3 was played. There could be some tricks, you know. Knight d3, and now rook to g5. Rook to f4, f3, h6, hitting the rook plus making left, and after rook to d5, knight b4 followed, hitting the rook, rook d6, rook f5, rook to b7, hitting the knight, rook to d5. Of course, if the rook takes on b4, this would be a terrible mistake because now black would be up the exchange. So what followed was rook b6, and now a very calm move by Ding. He goes rook to d8, and the point is, of course, if white takes there, then black can take there with either rook, and it's completely equal. Nepomniachtchi tries one last trick, which is knight f6, and after gf6, rook takes, and now rook d4. And even though the pawn structure has been damaged, this is a very easily holdable endgame. And after a trade of rooks, a few more moves followed. However, this is a position that Ding Liren, of course, knows how to hold. He would not lose this because the king from g7 can defend all three pawns, even though they cannot defend each other, those pawns. But it's very hard for white to achieve anything in this position, so a draw was agreed. Now, moving on to game 3. Now Ding Liren had the white pieces and he opened up the game with one knight f3. So an interesting opening choice. He has not played one knight f3 in any game of the match so far. He did play the close relatives of this move, which are one d4 and one c4. There are some differences, and one of them is that after c4, black cannot go d5, while after knight f3, he can go d5. On the other hand, after c4, black can go e5, while after knight f3, black cannot go e5. So, like in every opening, you gain something and you give something. Knight f3, d5, g3, knight f6, bishop e2, g2, e6, castles, and now bishop e7. This was the choice by Nepomniachtchi. And here, this could lead to the French defense also after, let's say, d3, castles, and now knight d2. If c5, then e4, and we are in the territory of the French defense, the King's Indian attack variation, which was played many times by Fischer, Robert James Fischer. And c4 was played instead. Now, after castles, d4 would be a direct transposition to the Catalan, where most likely, I assume Nepomniachtchi would play d takes c4, and we would reach the deep Catalan theory. However, Ding Liren preferred not to play the main line. He went b3, intending to develop his bishop on b2. c5 was played, and now Nepomniachtchi might have been intending to go d4 here and just grab some space in the center, while after c takes d5, he might have not liked the positions with an isolated pawn that would arise here. And I believe this is a good version for white, still close to equal, but if I would prefer someone, I would certainly prefer white. So knight takes d5, bishop b2, knight c6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, knight takes d4, and here queen takes d4. Okay, taking with the bishop is also possible, and bishop f6. Of course, queen d2 is absolutely forced because the queen needs to retreat to a square from where it protects the bishop on b2, and the only square where this would be possible is d2, so he played it in 2 seconds. Instant moves need to be played quickly. If you struggle in rapid and blitz, if you struggle because you're low on time, automatic moves need to be played quickly. And also a very important advice is that when you're low on time, it's a great idea to think in your opponent's turn. So knight f4 was played. A very interesting move. G takes f4. No, he did not blunder a piece. However, after he exchanges the queens, we see the so-called removal of the defender, a very important concept in chess. Knight takes d2, and now bishop takes b2, because the queen on d2 was defending the bishop on b2. And now rook to d1, bishop f6, and now knight c4. So white is pushing for a slight advantage. And as we know, in the Catalan, this very often happens because of the presence of the light square bishop on g2, which makes it hard for black to develop. And you can see here the light square bishop of black is unable to be developed because d7 is controlled, and anyway it has a task of defending the pawn on b7. So rook b8 was played, and now the idea is to follow up with something like b5 or b6 and then activate the light square bishop. So knight e5 was played, rook d8, and after a trade of rooks, rook d1. So white puts their rook on an open file. I cannot stress enough how important it is to have your pieces on open files. Bishop e7, and now knight d7, bishop takes d7, rook takes d7, king f8 defends the bishop, and here it seems that white can gain a pawn. However, doubled pawns and opposite colored bishops mean that black shouldn't have many problems in holding a draw. Now rook d8 followed, and after a trade of rooks, it would be easier for black to make a draw. So rook c7 was the right choice by Ding, and now a5 was played. Still, black is a pawn down. White has a rook on the 7th rank. He needs to show some technique in order to hold the draw. Rook c4, and now bishop b4, rook c2, rook d2. And here a trade of rooks followed because you don't want to risk being worse, because he was threatening not only the a2 pawn but also the e2 pawn. And after taking the e2 pawn, there would be ideas linked with bishop c5 or bishop e7, bishop h4 to put pressure on the h4 pawn. So he just thought to swap off the rooks, and he tried to do something in this position. However, the presence of opposite colored bishops ensured black the draw. Maybe he could have played on a bit more, but he decided to offer a draw after king e2. So after the first 3 games in this match, the score is equal. And now we're moving on to the last game, where, as you can see, Ding Liren won and became the new world champion. Well, in this game, Nepomniachtchi played his main move again, 1e4. Ding Liren played e5, sticking to their main weapons, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, a6, bishop a4, knight f6, castles, bishop e7. I have already mentioned the nuances and the alternatives. 63, so this has been the main weapon of Team Nepo. And yeah, bishop takes c6 was only shown in 1 game of this match. So 63, b5, bishop b3, d6, and now a4. So in this position, Nepomniachtchi has tried 3 different moves, a4, a3, and c3. They are all legitimate moves that can be played. After a4, bishop d7, h3, castles, bishop e3, knight a5, bishop a2, b takes a4. So this is the preparation of Team Ding. And knight c3 was played, rook b8, and now bishop b1. I'm pretty sure in the previous match, no, things were different. Yeah, he needs to somehow defend the pawn on b2. However, I don't know what's happening after rook takes b2. I'm a bit puzzled. Is it knight a4 hitting the rook and the long-term compensation? I'm assuming it is. Yeah, I was right. Quite an odd move, I must say. Queen e8. This move does make a lot of sense because it defends the pawn on a4 and b3. So, no, he didn't sacrifice a pawn, because if he takes on b3 with the pawn, then the rook on a5 is hanging. c5 was played instead, and now knight takes e4 and knight c6. Knight to c3. And yes, the a6 pawn is weak. However, the bishop on b1 is also horrible. a5 by Ding, and now knight d2, bishop e6, knight c4, d5, e d5, knight d5, bishop d2, knight takes c3, bishop takes c3, bishop takes c4, b takes c4. So now the bishop at least can see the light by going to a2 and from there to b3 and from there to a4. It can be very useful on a4, pinning the knight. Bishop to d8, bishop d2, bishop c7. Another possibility to activate the bishop would be going c3 and eventually at the right moment going d4. Then the bishop would be very strong on the long diagonal. A bishop pair, but not a bishop pair that matters because the bishop on b1 is quite bad. Maybe even black is slightly better. Of course, their bishop is also restricted by their own pawns. I would say it's roughly equal. c3 was played, and now f5 by Ding. Rook to e1, rook to d8, rook a2, queen g6, activating the black queen, queen e2, queen d6, increasing some pressure on the d6 pawn, g3, and also not only that, but the main thing is that black wants to go e4 and then threaten queen h2, check, king f1, queen h1, checkmate. So g3 followed, rook goes from rook d to e8, queen f3, e4, hitting the queen, d takes e4, knight takes e5, queen g2, knight to d3, bishop takes d3, queen takes d3, e takes f5, rook takes e1, bishop takes e1, queen takes c4, rook a1, rook takes f5, bishop d2, and here the position is again roughly equal. Let's see how it continued. h6, always a useful move because not only it controls the g5 square, but it makes an escape square from the black king to go to h7 if needed. Queen up to c6, rook f7 defending the bishop on c7, rook comes up to e1, king h7 to avoid any checks on e8, either by the queen or by the rook, and bishop e3, bishop e5, queen goes to e8, bishop takes c3, rook c1, rook f6, queen d7, queen e2, queen d5, bishop to b4, queen e4, king g8, queen d5, king h7, queen e4, rook g6. So black decides to avoid the repetition that was probably going to arise. Queen f5 and now c4. So yeah, even though the position was given equal by the computers, I'm curious, why did he not go bishop takes c5? And this apparently is a losing move. Oh, it loses the queen. Yeah, okay, silly me. Yeah, so yeah, the position might appear equal. However, yeah, the main thing in this position is that black is up one pawn and he has two passed pawns. Well, white does not have any passed pawns, and white would need to prove the draw. Queen f5 followed, and now c4, and now h4, so the threat was h5. However, queen d3 deals with that threat very effectively because offers a trade of queens, and always remember that when we are losing, we should not exchange the queens unless, of course, there is a good reason to do so. In chess, there are exceptions, but this one was not one of them. So queen f3, rook to f6, hitting the queen, queen to g4, c3, rook d1, queen g6, queen c8, rook c6, queen a8, rook d6, rook takes d6, queen takes d6, queen e4, queen g6, queen c4, queen b1, king h2, a4, bishop to d4, a3, queen c7, queen g6, queen to c4, c2. The passed pawns are advancing, and I'm sure if you know me and if you've watched some of my previous videos, you will know that one of my favorite, actually my favorite chess code is the one by Aaron Nimzovich in his book My System, where he says that the passed pawn is a criminal that must be held under lock and key. Mild measures such as police surveillance are not sufficient. And here we have not only one criminal, but two passed pawns, bishop e3. So he tries to keep them under lock and key, but yeah, bishop d6 followed, king g2, so he goes out of the diagonal, which is Okay, king g2, h5, king f1, bishop e5. So he puts the bishop on a very important diagonal, because if the pawn ever passes from a2, the bishop will be defending it on a1. Also, the bishop can come to b2 and help the promotion of the other pawn. So very important move, bishop e5, intending bishop b2 perhaps. g4 was played by white, takes, and now h5. The plan is, if black if white takes, then I think it's queen e4 check, and maybe taking the bishop on e5. So just to show it, if here, then here, and if here, then here. So there was a better move. Instead, the better move was g6. But again, this loses the bishop, and the computer might say, sorry, this doesn't lose the bishop. I'm just being silly. However, it does lose the pawn, so he can't have everything. Still, this should be winning for black, but yeah, the queen defends the bishop. But if the queen comes to g6, then this loses the bishop, and now, black has chances again. Anyway, h5, and now queen f5, and now queen d5. Of course, it's extremely important when you have undefended pieces like the queen here that the king is not on g1. If the king was on g1, then bishop h2 would instantly win the queen. g3 was played, taking advantage of the pin, and f4 from white, a2, and the problem here is that after queen takes a2, then there is the move queen d3, which wins the bishop on the spot and the game as well, because the king cannot go anywhere. For example, if the king goes there, then takes, and if he takes, oops, this would be a mistake, I already messed it up, because after queen takes c2 check, king goes somewhere and then takes on e5. So yeah, if he goes anywhere else, like on e1 or on g1, he takes the bishop on e3 with check. If queen to g2, then okay, this should be winning for black. For example, okay, I'm just going to look at the computer because I'm very tired. Queen e2, king h3, and now g2, and now the bishop cannot defend both pawns, and this should be winning for black. Also, queen a1 is not possible because the bishop is still alive, and if the bishop takes, then black will promote, let's say, on c1, and if he takes, when he takes, then he promotes on, oops, the queen has, I've dropped the queen, silly me. Okay, so first maybe a promotion here, and after he takes, then we give a check first, and then the king goes somewhere, and then we promote on c1, and we are completely winning. There is no perpetual or anything like that. So after queen takes a2, bishop takes a4, queen takes a2 followed, bishop takes a4, and now he resigned because the bishop is under attack. If the bishop moves anywhere, then c1 is a queen, and if takes, then takes, and this is going to be a checkmate. If he goes on g1, then of course this is going to be a checkmate. Sorry, not there, of course I mouse slipped. Queen to h2, and if he comes up to e2, this is also going to be completely winning. After c1, the fact that the pawn on h5 is still alive and the king can come to d3 means that there are no stalemate tricks, like no queen h7 or anything, queen g8 or anything like that. So yeah, it ended in a win. He resigned after the move. Queen takes a2, bishop takes f4. So here he threw the towel, Nepomniachtchi, which meant that Ding Liren is now the new world champion after Magnus Carlsen declined to defend his title. My comments are that, okay, it was a very interesting match. It was decided in the rapid time control. I will not judge that. It also was decided in the rapid time control when Magnus Carlsen won his title against Sergei Karyakin in 2016 and Fabiano Caruana in 2018. This is how it works. We have standard time control, then we have rapid, then we have blitz. It was a good idea that both games were on the weekend, so people that were working could watch them. Also, it was a good idea to increase the number of games from 12 to 14. These were steps in the right direction. The lack of increment until move 60, personally, I'm not a fan of it. However, it does make the games more entertaining for the crowds, for the masses. Anyway, yeah, it was a very interesting match. Congratulations to Ding Liren, a massive achievement. The first time a Chinese player becomes a world chess champion in chess. It has happened in the past in the Women's World Championship, but first time in the Open World Championship, we have a Chinese champion. Well done to Ding Liren. And yeah, I hope that you enjoyed the videos I've been making. I will continue making videos, but on other topics now. Thank you very much, everyone, for watching. I hope you learned something new. You enjoyed my videos. I'm really grateful for you for watching until the end. Thanks again for watching. Congratulations to Ding Liren. Commiserations to Nepomniachtchi. And if you're a subscriber, I will catch you at the next video. Thank you for watching and bye for now.